We welcome back Dr. Ivan Misner of BNI, the world's largest networking organization, which has over 8,200 chapters throughout every populated continent in the world. Dr. Ivan Misner of BNI, back on Small Talk. Dr. Ivan Misner, welcome back to Small Talk.
Hey, it's great to be on again. Thank you so much.
Hey, this is great. So the first part, if you haven't seen it, please go and check out the first part of our conversation with Ivan Misner. Now, Ivan, last time we spoke, you introduced a survey that you did, and within that survey, there were a number of questions that you were asking, and it was really around what are the great characteristics or the positive characteristics of a, as you call it, a great networker. Yeah. And we laid out, the top three. And this time, we're looking at what were the least important. What were the ones that kind of made the bottom of the barrel? What ones made the bottom list? And you're going to cover off 5 of them, which I'm really interested in hearing. And so, the folks who clearly have been, have watched the first show, Ivan, 33 years ago, started BNI. If you have not heard of BNI, please Google BNI. And if you're in part of the BNI group, you know exactly what the model is all about. It's building a network, referring your network. It's about conversations. It's really the skill set that you need to build either a level of a business or your community. So Ivan, share with us now the 5 least, the ones that made that bottom of not being a great network.
I would love to do that, and make sure to go back and listen to that first one, and note that a number of the things in that first one were very almost introverted related, listening, helping others, not necessarily what one would think of always, particularly the listening or extrovert. Now listen to the least important and tell me if you see a pattern here. I'm going to give you the 4 of the bottom 5, and I'm going to save the absolute dead last for last. Here's the 5th to the last, least important characteristic: fearless and confident. People did not feel that was helpful to be a great networker at all. That's one. Next is asks for the sale, which we talked about in the last podcast, and I said it's a bad idea. This is why. People say, "Oh, it never hurts to ask it." Yes, it does hurt to ask, because if you ask before there's a relationship, it doesn't go anywhere. So asking for the sale does not make you a good networker. As a matter of fact, you'll end up at the bottom of this list, not at the top. Third, self-promoter. They said self-promoter is one of the least important characteristics of being a great networker. And here's the second to the last: directness. Somebody being real direct, which kind of fits with the self-promoter and asks for the sale, fearless and confident. They felt that directness, and this survey is based on 3,400 people from all over the world, not just BNI members, open to the public. And so it isn't just BNI members, and there's 3,400 people that did it. All of those, look at those characteristics. They're all extrovert related. People assume that if you're an extrovert, you're a better networker. Well, that's not necessarily true. Listen, I've met extroverts that were great networkers, but they learned that it's about building the relationship first. Because most extroverts love to talk, and what do they talk about? Themselves. It's their favorite topic. So what you want to do is you want to develop that skill of learning how to listen and ask questions. So being an extrovert is not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a great networker. You've got to really tone it down a bit. Again, based on the survey. Now, the number 5, the absolute last characteristic surprised me. Really surprised me. It doesn't apply to introvert or extrovert. The last one was social media savvy. So out of 20 different characteristics, their ability to interact effectively on social media was dead last. Now, when I read that, I thought, wow, that millennials wouldn't say that. And so I went back, and luckily I asked for age. And so I pulled millennials out of this to look at what would millennials do it. And I was right. They did it differently. They ranked it second to the last. So it's almost exactly the same. Even millennials know that social media is a great way to build a brand, to get out there and stay connected with people, but it doesn't mean you have networking skills by being active on social media. And I just thought that was an amazing result that I did not anticipate.
I'm in total shock hearing that social media engagement activity is last.
Dead last.
That is amazing. I'm literally speechless that is the last. Now, let's just recap. So you talked about confidence. There was the ability to direct selling. There was self-promoter, someone self-promoting.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I wanted to ask you, people talk about, and you mentioned this also in the last show we had, but even today, you talked about questioning and asking the right questions.
Yeah.
What do you think are the right questions? Because, for me, when I'm at networking events or I've been invited to speak at a networking event, I always talk about asking the right questions. And those questions aren't things like, hey, how are you? And what do you do?
Right. So, in several of my books, I talk about questions and they're important. I'll give you a couple of examples, but, I've also seen people who've taken my list and they'll go, so what do you do? And I'm like, it's not an interrogation. It's a discussion,
Right.
So the basics are easy. Tell me about what you do. Tell me about what you love.
Yes.
About what you do. What are you passionate with it? What's your area of expertise? Now, here's the thing. Don't worry about going through your list. Don't check. You don't need to do that. Instead, what you want to do is go down the rabbit hole with them. So when they say, I love to do this, then keep asking questions that go down that tree, that limb, so that they can express what they're most excited about, what they're most interested in. One of the things that when I've done that and I've talked to somebody for at least 10 minutes, one of the things I like to wrap up with is you can't start with this question, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the challenges you have in your business?
Yes.
Great question, because if you've built a little bit of a rapport and they tell you a challenge and you have anything to help them with that challenge,
yes,
and not sell to them, you don't say, oh, I got just the product to take care of that.
Right.
Refrain from that on the first conversation. But if you say, hey, I know somebody that does that, would you like me to make an introduction? Then you're giving a referral, not necessarily to this person, because you don't know if they're any good at what they do. But if they express a need and you say, hey, I know somebody that does that, would you like me to introduce you? Boom, now you're becoming a connector. You connect people like that. People recognize you as a connector, and then you build your own personal network. And that's what it's all about, is building those relationships.
And you talk about giver's gain. That's giver's gain, right? That's what you talk about all the time.
Yeah. But you got to give to people who you know and you have a relationship with.
Right.
Maybe in a future show, we'll talk about the VCP process: visibility, credibility, profitability. And you have to move through that process over time in order to get to where you feel comfortable giving referrals.
So, folks, you're watching this, and I strongly recommend before you go to any networking event, please watch both of these shows. Get an understanding of how to be the great networker in terms of the top 3 characteristics that this research and the survey that Ivan and the group put together. And then also watch this show to make sure you are not the ones that is at the bottom, and make sure you're not direct selling and you are not promoting and the things we talked about today. If you want to continue this conversation, Ivan's information is on the screen. Go and reach out to the websites that we have on there. Please look him up in terms of the articles and the podcast. Now, I've got one last question, Ivan, to ask you. And we ask this all the time. And last time we asked you this question, you had a really amazing answer. And so the question again is, if you had an opportunity, Ivan, to have a small talk conversation with anyone, living or past, who would it be?
So I said Gandhi in the last one, amazing human being, certainly the epitome of giver's gain. Let me go to business this time. It would be Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I've read Think and Grow Rich a number of times. I'd love to talk to the man that wrote that really seminal book that introduced self-development into business, because prior to him, it was all about scientific management, Frederick Taylor and the Galbraiths. But when he started talking about basically what amounts to the law of attraction, that was a whole different perspective on business.
Wow, that's amazing. So folks, let's continue this conversation. We're hoping that these two sessions, these two-parters, are going to help you up your game in terms of your networking skills, bring and build your network. And certainly, Ivan, thank you so much for being on Small Talk. Again, it's a two-parter. I love it. And we certainly look forward to having you on some future shows. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you to Dr. Ivan Misner of BNI for joining me on Small Talk. Now it's your turn. Please comment, subscribe, and share. If you've got a topic you'd like to discuss on the show, please give me a call or send me an email. We'll talk with you next time. To watch previous shows, visit us on YouTube and search for EMpression, a marketing services company. Don't forget to join us on one of the following social media channels.